Congress.
Dear Congress.
Dear Congress.
Wealth inequality in the United States, also known as the wealth gap, refers to the unequal distribution of assets among residents of the United States. Wealth includes the value of homes, automobiles, personal valuables, businesses, savings, and investments.
There are about 1.3 million poor families right now, including children, that the mother is not working and they're also not getting cash benefits. And you have to ask yourself, how do those people actually get by the day?
Wealth inequality in the U.S. is worse than in most other developed countries.
As the average American will tell you, the wealth inequality is getting worse and worse in this country. As 1% of America holds 40% of all the wealth, and 80%, that's 8 in 10 of Americans, hold only 7% of the nation's wealth. Half of Americans only own 0.5% of the stock bonds that we have. That means we're just scraping by. When we look inside the corporate world, an average CEO makes 380 times more than your average employee. That employee would have to work a month to make exactly what a CEO makes in an hour.
And many of them employed by retailers themselves do not make enough money to purchase the consumer goods that drive our economy. It has been 4 years since minimum wage workers have received a pay raise. Since that point, incomes of the top 1% have grown more than 31%.
I think it's outrageous. The bottom 50% of society has virtually none of the society's wealth.
1,000 Americans, how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution. And 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing.
The poor are getting poorer, wages are falling behind inflation, and social mobility is at an all-time low. But if you're in that top 1%, life is grand.
Some primary causes contributing to the creation and persistence of the wealth inequality include monetary policy, financial resources, money allocation, higher rate of savings, higher net rate of return to assets owned by the rich, lower credit costs and credit constraints for the wealthy, inflation, tax policy, and decline of unionization.
Essentially, the wealthy possess more financial opportunities. They invest their money, and then that money makes more money. But the poor, the bottom 20%, they're just scraping by. They're investing in things like refrigerators, things that people need, but over time, the value of these things decreases, and they're not making any more money.
One of the key contributors to opportunity is wealth, and inequality of wealth is even worse than inequality of income. In 2007, before the recession, the top 1% had 21% of the national income share, but 35% of the national wealth. And after the recession, it's not good. According to new figures from the Federal Reserve, the median net worth of families fell by almost 40% during the Great Recession.
Income inequality eats away at the growth of the economy. The great mass of people can't get ahead, so there's no incentive to work harder. and growth will slow. Eventually the economy will crash.
There are 47% of the people who will vote for the president no matter what. All right, there are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. That it's an entitlement, and the government should give it to them. And they will vote for this president no matter what. And I mean, the president starts off with 48, 49, 40, he starts off with a huge number. These are people who pay no income tax. 47% of Americans pay no income tax. So our message of low taxes doesn't connect. And he'll be out there talking about tax cuts for the rich. I mean, that's what they sell every 4 years. And so my job is not to worry about those people. I'll never convince them that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. What I have to do is convince the 5 to 10% in the Senate that are independent, that are thoughtful, that look at voting one way or the other, depending upon, in some cases, emotion, whether they like the guy or not.
I'm dying or the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. The people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Enlarging your world. Mad world.
Feeling my way through the darkness, guided by a beating heart. I can't tell where the journey will end, but I know where to start. They tell me I'm too young to understand. They say I'm caught up in a dream. Well, life will pass me by if I don't open up my eyes, so that's fine by me. So wake me up.